second relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. The long-awaited, long-anticipated showdown between Canada's own unbeaten up-and-comer Kim Clavel and the reigning light flyweight WBC champion of Mexico, Yesenia Gomez. It's finally here. It's going down
this Friday, north of the border, in Canada.
This fight has experienced some bumps in the road, some issues. I recall the fight being postponed because Yesenia Gomez wanted a little bit more time, and then the fight was postponed again due to Kim Clavel contracting COVID-19.
But it's finally here, and it's set to go down on Friday.
And as stated, I haven't changed my mind on this one. I think the WBC title, I think the green belt in the light flyweight division is about to change hands from Yesenia Gomez, the champion, to Kim Clavel, the challenger who's a few years older than the champion. Kim Clavel is a very fresh and fly 31 years old to Yesenia Gomez.
Yesenia is 5 years younger than Kim. She's 26.
A veteran of 27 professional contests, 27 professional bouts, sporting a professional record of 19 wins, 5 losses with 3 draws, to Kim Clavel, who sports an unblemished record of 15 wins, no losses, and no draws.
An ambitious, unbeaten up-and-comer who's been waiting for this opportunity for a long time.
Tail of the tape, they're not necessarily evenly matched. Yesenia Gomez does have somewhat of a height advantage and a reach advantage, standing in at about 5'6" to Kim Clavel, who stands in at a very petite 5'1". In terms of wingspan,
Yesenia Gomez has about 2 inches more reach than Kim does.
though she doesn't use it very much. Yesenia Gomez is a close quarters fighter, a mid-range to inside fighter that looks to sit in the pocket and trade punches, trade blows. She's not as athletic, not as nimble, not as fleet of foot as Kim Clavel, and I think that's going to make a difference.
Kim Clavel, who only boxed once last year and was in action earlier this year, in March.
And in that way, Kim Clavel has fought at least 2 times in the last 12 months. This will be her 3rd fight.
This will be her 3rd fight in the last 12 months.
She was last in action in March of this year against Mariela Rivera, who retired in her corner after 4 rounds in what was scheduled to be a 10-round contest, a 10-round fight.
Kim's been busy, at least busier than Yesenia.
Yesenia was last in action in October of last year, and before that she hadn't seen action until October of the previous year. In that way, Yesenia Gomez has actually only boxed once in the last 12 months. And for what it's worth, Yesenia Gomez's quality of competition, it isn't terrible. You know, a lot of those girls had winning records, but they don't exhibit the ceiling of a Kim Clavel, the ability, the athletic ability, the boxing acumen. That's what separates this fight from, say, the fight she had in October of 2020 against Mirna Sanchez. Kim Clavel does exhibit more promise than that unbeaten fighter did.
That's why I think there's a good chance that the green belt is going to change hands.
I do happen to think Yesenia Gomez is on the verge of losing the green belt, losing the WBC title. Yesenia Gomez, who's a bit of a flat-footed mid-range to inside fighter, wants to sit in the pocket behind that high guard, catching and shooting and ripping shots to the body. You wonder...
Yesenia shows a good variety of punches for what it's worth.
And I'd wager between Yesenia and Kim Clavel, Yesenia might actually be the slightly harder puncher. The problem is, Yesenia's accustomed to girls that are going to stand right in front of her.
What's she going to look like if she has to work for her meal?
That's a legitimate question. For what it's worth, she shows an admirable variety of punches when she's within striking distance, but Kim Clavel could make it difficult for her to get within striking distance. And Yesenia Gomez, not being the most fleet of foot fighter, not particularly athletic,
Kim can make herself a moving target, a hard target.
Kim Clavel's sweet spot, like Yesenia Gomez's sweet spot, seems to be mid-range to inside, but Kim Clavel, unlike Yesenia Gomez, is fleet of foot. She has in-and-out game to get within striking distance and safely get out.
And where Yesenia Gomez might be the slightly harder puncher, speed has to go to Kim Clavel.
Seems like Kim's got a bit more speed in those hands as she strings together combinations, throws punches in sequence, rapid succession, and gets out of the way.
Whereas Yesenia, she's not as dynamic as Kim Clavel. Not as dynamic, she's a lot more straightforward.
She's going to come forward in that high guard, catching shots on the arms, catching shots on the gloves as she inches forward in order to close the gap and get within striking distance of the girl opposite the ring.
Whereas Kim's got more nuances, more subtlety. She's a bit trickier to the eye than Yesenia Gomez is.
And that's not saying that it's going to be a blowout. That's not saying that Kim Clavel isn't going to have to work for it. We are talking about a long-reigning champion, after all, and a more experienced professional boxer than Kim Clavel is. But I'd wager that because Kim is somewhat more dynamic than Yesenia Gomez, and because Kim Clavel is the fighter with home field advantage. Lest we forget, this is an Yvonne Michelle promotion taking place in Canada. Kim Clavel's native Canada. It's Kim that's got home field advantage. So in a situation where the rounds are tight,
close, those rounds may go to Kim Clavel because she is the house fighter with home field advantage.
Yesenia Gomez may be the more experienced fighter in the fight. In many ways, she is a long-reigning champion, but I happen to think the only reason she's reigned as a champion for so long is because she's normally shied away from fights with ambitious fighters like Kim Clavel. Lest we forget, they left Kenya Enriquez's title shot lying in limbo for years.
And that wasn't by accident. They knew there's a good chance that Kenya might take that title away from Yesenia. They have so decided to travel to Canada, take on Kim Clavel.
Maybe it's because Kim Clavel's handlers were able to offer Yesenia more money than Kenya Enriquez's handlers were able to offer. Maybe it's because in many ways Kenya was a high-risk, low-reward, whereas with Kim, perhaps the reward is a little better, so it's worth the risks. Your guess is as good as mine, but in any event, I am going with Kim Clavel to win this fight by way of a points decision in what could be a very competitive bout, a very competitive contest, but a contest where the green belt changes hands. I'm going with Kim to become this division's newly crowned WBC light flyweight champion. In men's heavyweight news, some insights into Alexander Usyk's performance in his first fight with Anthony Joshua ahead of his second. He said, "It was a really difficult fight for me. Afterwards, at the hotel, I fell asleep sitting up." The newly crowned unified heavyweight champion was quoted as saying, "It was a really difficult fight for me. Everybody keeps saying it was an easy walk, but no, it wasn't. It was a hard fight for him, and it was a hard fight for me. After the fight, I came back to the hotel, and I took some food, and I fell asleep sitting up."
Perhaps people misinterpreted Usyk's post-fight statements that this wasn't the hardest fight he's ever had.
Because I vaguely recall Usyk saying something along those lines immediately after the fight, though this not being his hardest fight doesn't necessarily make it his easiest fight or an easy fight overall either. The rematch, originally scheduled for the spring, almost didn't happen. The Russian invasion of Ukraine in February compelled Usyk to return to his country and enlist in the military. After several weeks, however, Usyk, due to the incessant prodding of his friends and countrymen, decided he could be of more use to his country by defending his titles than stay sitting in the basement of a building. "All I did was just pray," Usyk said. "I did not want to leave Ukraine, but I visited my friends in the military and I visited them in the hospital. All of them were asking me to participate in this fight, to take the rematch and to fight for the whole country of Ukraine. Even my wife. I wanted to send her and my kids out of Ukraine, but she said she would not go. She said I would not go, and that's it."
The crisis in Ukraine, the Russian invasion of it, I should say.
A lot of people have wondered what effect, if any, that might have on Alexander Usyk's headspace and his performance ahead of this rematch, because his country is essentially under attack. Could that affect him ahead of this rematch? Could it affect him adversely, or could it leave him feeling so emboldened to perform as an ambassador of the Ukraine?
Representing Ukrainian excellence.
The broadcast partner for the fight has been officially announced by way of the United Kingdom. It is, in fact, going to be Sky Sports, which should come as a surprise to no one because news broke some time ago that Sky Sports placed the winning bid.
People were starting to get worried because an official announcement wasn't made.
But I don't know how much more official it needed to be that Sky Sports won the broadcast rights for this fight, at least in the United Kingdom. That news broke days ago.
Seems there were a lot of people complaining in the in-between time.
Complaining that the fight took too long to get over the line, not factoring into the equation the crisis in Ukraine, the Russian invasion. That's a big part of the reason this thing got delayed.
Did you forget?
That had its role to play. Eddie Hearn was very recently available for comment in reference to Anthony Joshua, and he said he loves the fact that he's going straight back in with Alexander Usyk when everyone went, don't go back in with Alexander Usyk. It's because he's trying to prove.
He's trying to prove to you that he's a great, and when he wins,
let's put him down as an all-time great. You know, Anthony Joshua currently has the same number of losses that all-time great UK British heavyweight Lennox Lewis had at the time of his retirement. Lennox suffered 2 recorded losses throughout his career, and so has Anthony Joshua. We'll soon find out if Anthony is cut from the same cloth as Lennox, if he can.
If he can avenge this loss to Alexander Usyk the same way that he avenged the loss to Andy Ruiz.
Something that's often brought up in reference to Lennox Lewis, that he avenged every loss that he suffered, that he might have lost to Oliver McCall, but he got that back in the rematch, and the same applies to the Hasim Rahman knockout, the Hasim Rahman loss. He got it back with him as well. Does Anthony Joshua have it within him to be that kind of heavyweight, that kind of fighter. A lot of people don't think so.
I've seen a lot of people say quite plainly they think he's going to get knocked out.
They think the crisis, the invasion of Ukraine, has left Alexander Usyk more emboldened than he initially was, and it might leave him looking to make an even bigger statement than the one he made in their first fight. This could seriously hamper Anthony Joshua's plans to become a 3-time heavyweight champion. Moreover, his plans to return later on this year in December. Per a tweet from Michael Benson, Eddie Hearn has declared that Anthony Joshua's next fight after Alexander Usyk rematch will be in December. The one thing he wants more than anything is activity, and December will definitely be his next fight.
That seems like a plan that's centered around a best-case scenario, a scenario where Anthony wins.
What if he loses? What if he gets knocked out? Does he come back in December if he suffers a knockout loss to Alexander Usyk? In the first fight, he lost the decision, though he looked like he came very close to being stopped in the later rounds. What if he actually gets stopped? What if he actually gets knocked out? Does he still come back in December?
Is he going to want to?
If he wins and becomes a 3-time heavyweight champion, reclaims all those alphabet titles, I'm sure he won't mind coming back in December. He'll be riding high and be in good spirits. But if he loses for the 3rd time in his career, what will that do to him psychologically? What will that do to his morale and his passion for the sport? Will he still want to come back?
One thing's for sure, doesn't look like we're getting undisputed this year.
No, it doesn't, per yet another tweet from Michael Benson. Eddie Hearn on Tyson Fury versus Derek Chisora 3. I think someone from Tyson's team has reached out to Chisora about fighting him in December. Who knows whether or not he's going to come back? I don't know.
In my previous video, we talked about Tyson Fury's proposed fight with actor and strongman Thor Björnsson,
as well as the proposed MMA versus boxing crossover fight with UFC champion Francis Ngannou. It seems that Tyson Fury is in somewhat of a hurry to get himself booked.
He's looking at Francis Ngannou, he's looking at Thor Björnsson, and apparently he's also looking at Derek Chisora.
And this is a big part of what facilitates the notion that the only way Tyson Fury will box for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world is if Anthony Joshua reclaims those alphabet titles. If it's Usyk, people aren't so sure. If it's Usyk that emerges the victor, if it's Usyk that keeps those belts, people aren't convinced that Tyson Fury will come back. Not based on all these options, these other options that he's entertaining. He won the Dillian White fight with relative ease.
He beat Dillian easier than I thought he would.
He didn't take a lot of punishment in that fight, so ideally, because he's boxed in the last 12 months, that sets him up for something bigger, since he has no cobwebs to shake off, and what he looks to be doing is looking for a cash fight, a cash grab, I should say, because why else would he be boxing an MMA fighter? Why else would he be boxing an actor and a strongman?
Why else would he be looking to do that?
The proliferation of these kinds of reports, the proliferation of these names that are being thrown out there, you just get the sense that if an undisputed heavyweight title fight is going to happen, it ain't going to happen this year. And finally, in men's light heavyweight news, ahead of what is to be the Gilberto Ramirez versus Dimitri Bivol fight, Gilberto vows to absorb Bivol's shine from shocking Canelo Alvarez. Besides the WBA title, Ramirez wants to absorb Bivol's shine from upsetting Canelo. The fact that now a lot of people know who Bivol is a good thing, because when I fight him, I'm going to get everything he has, and especially the world title. Ramirez told DAZN, I had the fight with Dimitri Bivol before Canelo, but he said no. He wanted Canelo first, but it ended up being a good thing for me because he beat Canelo. And you see the credibility of the fighter, the credibility that Bivol has. And now when I fight him, you will see the credibility that Zurdo Ramirez has. I want to be world champion again, unify titles, and eventually become a legend.
Zurdo's resume really doesn't tell that story.
But he's not off base. He's not wrong. Dimitri Bivol now has a profile that he didn't have before the Canelo Alvarez fight. And in that way, anyone who faces him now is part of a more high-profile fight than they would have been had they fought him before he beat Canelo Alvarez. Bivol versus Ramirez is now a bigger fight than it was before the Canelo Alvarez fight. So no, Zurdo's not wrong.
And what he aspires to do? Well, let's see if he could do it.
Zurdo Ramirez had a rather unremarkable run as a super middleweight champion in possession of the WBO title. In truth, he's been a rather unremarkable fighter. The only remarkable thing about Zurdo Ramirez is he could have 40-plus professional bouts, 40-plus professional contests, and not a single one of them left a lasting impression. That he could have 40-plus fights and none of them really qualify as a signature fight, a standout fight. He aspires for this fight to be that fight. I've often talked about how Zurdo Ramirez, he does have some of the right ingredients to make Dimitri Bivol work for it.
For starters, he's a naturally bigger guy than Canelo Alvarez.
Before Zurdo Ramirez even became a super middleweight champion, he campaigned as a light heavyweight. That's where he beat Maxim Vlasov many years ago. He's not a stranger to the light heavyweight division.
In fact, he may be more adequately suited for it, more so than Canelo Alvarez, even though Canelo is a more proven fighter, a more decorated fighter.
Albeit a naturally smaller fighter, because size counts the further up you go. Don't let anybody tell you different. We've talked about that, but one thing we haven't talked about is the Dimitri Bivol end of the spectrum. Yes, Zurdo Ramirez possesses certain qualities and characteristics that could trouble Dimitri Bivol. The fact that he's a very big guy, even as far as light heavyweights go, durable, and he's a volume puncher, a mid-range to inside pressure fighter who just so happens to be a southpaw. But Dimitri Bivol,
even though a pressure fighter can normally hamper a finesse fighting kind of fighter's game plan,
a guy whose base style lives between the pure boxer and the boxer puncher, a guy like Dimitri Bivol, even though sometimes a good pressure guy can hamper a guy like that, Dimitri Bivol's no stranger to mid-range to inside fighters, swarmers, and pressure guys. He fought Joe Smith Jr. years ago, beat him handily, and Jean Pascal. Before Jean Pascal went on that run where he beat Badu Jack and Marcus Brown, he was outpointed. He was handled by Dimitri Bivol.
And that victory is aging well.
Dimitri wouldn't be in unfamiliar territory with a pressure guy, applies constant pressure. He wouldn't be in unfamiliar territory with a mid-range to inside swarmer, an ambush fighter like a Jean Pascal, a seasoned guy. Essentially, Zurdo Ramirez might have some of the right ingredients to make it a fight, make Dimitri work for it.
Yeah, he might, but Dimitri Bivol has the right experiences, the right track record for the assignment, for the job.
He's not in unfamiliar territory. It's not just one way.
It's a good fight any way you slice it, regardless of who you think wins.
But as stated, it's not one way.